The night Zara met Richard Okonkwo, Lagos shimmered under a canopy of gold. The city buzzed with its usual energy. Cars honking, laughter echoing from rooftop bars, and the ever-present hum of ambition in the air. Welcome to Tales by Steph, a home of interesting African stories. Zara stood outside the grand ballroom of the Victoria Pearl Hotel, adjusting the single borrowed gown she wore, her nerves threatening to give her away. She wasn't supposed to be here. The event was exclusive, an invite-only charity gala attended by the wealthiest of the wealthy. But her best friend, Ify, a waitress at the hotel, had whispered, "Just wear something decent. Walk in with the staff and blend in. Who knows? You might meet someone important." So Zara had done just that. She wasn't one to chase fantasies, but life had been brutal lately. Rent was overdue, her mother's medication was out of stock, and the last job interview she attended ended with a polite, "We'll call you." That never came. If there was ever a night to hope for a miracle, this was it. Inside, the ballroom was a vision of opulence, chandeliers like frozen fireworks, soft jazz flowing through hidden speakers, and waiters gliding around with glasses of champagne. Zara stuck close to the walls, observing, dreaming. Then she saw him, Richard Okonkwo, the billionaire, the CEO of Oakline Holdings, the man whose name was whispered in boardrooms, whose photos were splashed across magazine covers, and whose net worth reportedly crossed the $1 billion mark before he turned 40. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a smooth charcoal suit that looked like it was tailored by the gods, he moved through the crowd like royalty. And then his eyes found hers. Zara froze, her breath caught. He wasn't supposed to notice her. She was invisible here, just a girl in a borrowed dress holding on to a borrowed dream. But Richard walked straight to her. "Hello," he said, his voice like melted honey. "You're the most stunning woman in this room. Why are you hiding in the shadows?" Zara blinked. I don't belong here." He chuckled. "Neither do I. I'm supposed to be at a board meeting in Dubai. But I chose to be here instead. Funny how fate works, isn't it?" Fate. That word would haunt Zara for the rest of her life. They talked for hours. At first, Zara was stiff, guarded, but Richard had a way of making people feel seen. He asked questions, listened intently, laughed at her jokes, and even shared a few personal secrets, like how he hated wine but drank it to appear cultured, or how he sometimes snuck away from meetings just to take long walks by himself. By midnight, he had taken her hand. By 1 a.m., they were in his penthouse suite. Zara had never done anything like this before. One-night stands were not her thing. But something about him, the way he looked at her like she mattered, like she wasn't just another girl from Ajagunle trying to survive, it made her believe in the moment. The night was electric, passionate. He was gentle, attentive, like he wanted to worship her. And when it was over, she lay beside him, feeling like maybe, just maybe, life had finally thrown her a lifeline. "You're different," he whispered, tracing a finger down her arm. "Not like the others." She smiled, shy. "Is that a good thing?" He kissed her forehead. "The best." They fell asleep, tangled in silk sheets. By morning, he was gone. There was a note on the pillow. "Had to rush for a meeting. You're unforgettable. Let's do this again sometime." There was no number, no contact, just that note, and a rose on the pillow. Zara floated through the next few days. Something inside her had shifted. She replayed every moment, every word, every glance. She told Ify everything, and Ify squealed like they were in a fairy tale. "You're going to be his queen," she cried. "Watch and see. He'll call." But he didn't. Days passed, then weeks. And then it began. The sickness. At first it was subtle. A headache here, a dizzy spell there. Zara thought it was stress, or maybe malaria. She took painkillers, drank warm tea, and kept hope alive. But then came the nausea, the sleepless nights, the constant crying that she couldn't explain. She would wake up drenched in sweat, her heart pounding like someone had just screamed in her ear. And the weight loss. It was terrifying. She wasn't dieting. She wasn't even trying. But her clothes hung off her like rags, her cheeks hollowed, her collarbones jutted out like sharp blades, her skin turned pale, almost gray. People began to notice. "Zara, are you okay? You look sick. You should see a doctor." She did, twice. Each time the results came back clean. "There's nothing physically wrong with you," the doctor said, frowning. "Are you under any emotional distress?" Zara shook her head. How could she explain the darkness creeping over her, the unshakable sense of dread that grew heavier each day? The crying worsened. It came in waves, in the market, on the bus, in her room at night. She would weep until her throat burned and her eyes swelled shut. She didn't know why. It felt like something inside her was dying. Ify tried to help, brought food, stayed the night, prayed over her. But nothing worked. One evening, as Zara stared at herself in the mirror, she didn't recognize the woman looking back. Her bones poked through her skin. Her eyes were sunken. Her lips cracked. She looked like a ghost, and deep inside, she felt empty, like something had been taken, like something had been stolen. That night, she whispered into the darkness, "What's happening to me?" And the darkness whispered back. Zara woke up to her own sobbing again. Her pillow was damp, her body drenched in sweat despite the fan spinning above her head. Her chest ached, not from any physical wound, but from something far worse. Emptiness. A hollow pain that refused to go away. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. The thought of food made her gag. Her lips were cracked. Her gums bled when she brushed. She dragged herself from bed, her legs shaking like those of a newborn calf. The moment she saw herself in the mirror, she screamed. Her skin had become pale and dry, like something drained of life. Her once full cheeks were sunken. Her arms looked like sticks. She ran her fingers through her hair and gasped. Clumps came off into her hands. Her eyes, they were no longer hers. They were dull, sunken, dark-ringed, haunted. She knew it now. This wasn't sickness. This wasn't malaria or typhoid or stress. It was something else, something darker. She picked up her phone and called Ify again. "Ify, I'm dying," she whispered, unable to stop shaking. "Something is killing me." Ify was there within an hour. The moment she stepped in and saw Zara, her eyes widened in horror. "Zara, Jesus, you look—" "Don't say it," Zara interrupted. "I know." She wept again in her friend's arms. "It's him, Ify. Richard. Something happened that night, I swear to you. I haven't been the same since. I think he did something to me." Ify stiffened. "What are you saying?" "I think he used me. For something evil." Ify's face went pale. She glanced around, then pulled Zara gently onto the bed. "We need to go see someone who understands these kinds of things." Zara didn't protest. She had no more strength to fight. That afternoon, they went to Ajagunle's outskirts, to a small compound tucked behind a shrine. The air smelled of herbs, smoke, and something older, something bitter. The woman they met was called Mama Edie, old, blind in one eye, with skin like bark, and eyes that seemed to see through flesh. She didn't speak much at first. She just stared at Zara. "You have been touched," she finally said. Zara shivered. "Touched?" Mama Ide nodded slowly. "Your soul is crying out. Your spirit is shrinking. Your essence is leaving you. You were used for something." Zara couldn't breathe. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. "If he slept with you and left," Mama Ide continued, "and you've been sick ever since, Then he didn't just take your body. He took something else, something deeper. This is not sickness, this is ritual. Zara clutched her chest. Are you saying he used me? For money rituals? Mama Ide looked grave. The kind of wealth some men seek is not given freely. Blood must speak, tears must fall, life must shrink for another to rise. Zara broke down completely. Her cries were primal, raw. Ify held her tight, whispering prayers and curses all at once. The old woman gave Zara herbs to bathe in, charcoal to sleep beside, and ashes to smear over her feet. But her warning was clear. If you don't fight this spiritually, you will waste away. You have already been claimed. Your soul is fading. That night, Zara lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her body felt cold, not from outside, but from within. Her fingertips tingled. Her breath came shallow. She thought of Richard, his smile, his touch, the way he held her. All a lie. She remembered the rose on the pillow, the way he disappeared, the fact that he never called. He never intended to. He got what he came for. She was never unforgettable to him. She was a sacrifice, and now she was dying. Zara could barely stand. Her clothes hung off her like they were meant for someone else. The herbs Mama Ide gave her did nothing. Her eyes sank deeper. Her ribs showed. Her mother cried each time she walked into the room. "This is not my daughter," she whispered over and over, rocking herself in prayer. One night, Zara jolted from a nightmare, Richard's face, smiling cruelly, dripping with blood. "Thank you," he whispered in her dream. "You made me rich." She screamed so loud the neighbors banged on the door. After that, the shadows came. They followed her. Whispers echoed in corners of her room. Something unseen would touch her skin at night, cold and crawling. She stopped sleeping. Then she found it, a blog post buried in an online forum. "My sister met Richard Okonkwo at a gala. She vanished 2 weeks later. We never found her." Zara's heart dropped. She wasn't the first. She wouldn't be the last. Unless she stopped him. Zara sent a message to the woman who posted about her missing sister. Hours passed with no reply. Just as she gave up hope, a message popped up. "Meet me, but come alone." They met in a quiet cafe. The woman's eyes were tired, haunted. "My sister's name was Chiamaka. She met Richard at a fundraiser. 2 weeks later, gone. Police did nothing. He's untouchable." She slid a folder across the table, photos, a voice note, a torn diary entry that read, "He said I was special. Now I can't sleep. I hear things. I feel like I'm dying." Zara felt her stomach twist. The words were too familiar. She hunted down a man who used to work at Oakline Holdings. He looked around nervously before speaking. "People talk. Women who sleep with him vanish, fall ill, or go mad, but no one dares accuse him. He's protected." Zara sat on her bed that night, shaking. Richard wasn't just rich, he was dangerous, and if she didn't act soon, she'd be next. Zara found Kelechi's name online, a journalist known for exposing powerful men. She sent him everything, photos, notes, names, tears. He responded within an hour. "Meet me. If this is true, we're going to burn him down." They met in his small office cluttered with files. Kelechi, sharp-eyed and fearless, took notes while Zara told her story. "This isn't just about you," he said. "There's a pattern here. We'll trace it." Together they dug. Victim by victim. Stories too similar to be coincidence. Hospital reports, missing persons files, anonymous tips. Then Kelechi found something chilling. Payments from Richard's private accounts to a strange offshore business tied to an old occult group. The next night, Zara returned home to chaos. Her door was broken, her things scattered. A note on her bed read, "Keep quiet or you'll disappear next." Zara's hands shook as she called Kelechi. He knows. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. They prepared a file, every detail, every name, every horror. Kelechi contacted a major news outlet. "Tomorrow," he said, "we release everything." Zara nodded, heart pounding. Tomorrow the world would know the monster hiding behind the billionaire's smile, if she lived to see it. The next morning, the story broke like wildfire. Headlines screamed, "CEO accused of using women for rituals," with Richard's face plastered across every screen. The exposé was raw, detailed, undeniable. Victims spoke out, families came forward, social media exploded. Richard's name was dragged through the mud. He denied everything. But it was too late. Zara, however, didn't celebrate. Her body failed her that same morning. She collapsed in Kelechi's office, gasping for breath. Her skin was ice, her pulse faint. Kelechi rushed her to Mama Ede, who stared at her with dread. "She's almost gone." There was only one hope left, a dangerous, forbidden ritual to sever the spiritual bond Richard had placed on her. That night, in the deepest part of the forest, surrounded by fire and incantations, Zara's soul was called back. She screamed, thrashed, begged for mercy. At that exact moment, far away, Richard convulsed in his mansion. The power shielding him cracked. The next morning, he was arrested. Police raided his properties. Bones, charms, and disturbing evidence were uncovered. His empire crumbled. Zara woke up a week later in Mama Edie's hut. Weak, but alive. She had survived. The curse was broken. The monster had fallen. And though her body was marked forever, her spirit was free. Morals of this story. This story reminds us that not everything glamorous is good. One night can change your life forever. Trust your instincts, speak up against evil, and remember, spiritual battles need spiritual strength. Even in pain, you can find purpose. With courage and truth, evil can be defeated. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, and comment.